This is a talk titled The Truth of Self. And to tell you the truth, I have to first make an important announcement. This announcement, if it is heard, will help you if you are endeavouring to find God or truth, to stop wasting time and get to the point. And the announcement is this: there is no higher self. There is only self. And self is ignorance. Everything is self. Everything is ignorance in existence. The only truth is out of existence. So if you want to find the truth, you have to be out of existence. That means you have to be free of attachment to self or attachment to existence. If you identify or are attached to your home, your bank account, your mother and father, your children, your partner, or anything as familiar as that, let alone so many other things, if you are attached to that, then you are going to suffer because you are attached to self. If you are attached to your body, you also will suffer because you will be attached to self, and all self dies or disappears. So you will suffer again. To attach yourself to self means suffering. As everybody in this world seems to suffer, I'm talking about psychological and mental suffering, then everybody obviously is attached to self. Whenever you cry, you are attached to self. Whenever you complain or blame, you are attached to self. If you are guilty or feel guilty, you are attached to self. You are selfish. Selfish? We better have a look at this, hadn't we? There's another word or expression called self-centered. And then there's another expression, the one I just used, called selfish. What's the difference? You know, it is said that there's no two words the same in the English language. So self-centered can't mean selfish, can it? Let's define selfish to be selfish first, so that you can look into your own life and see if you are selfish. To be selfish is to expect anything of another. How about that? Do you expect anything of someone else? We don't like this, do we? It's a bit close to the bone, isn't it? Well, I told you everything was self in existence. To be selfish is to be guilty. To be selfish is to be resentful, angry, To be selfish is to be unhappy. If I am moody at any time, I am selfish. Am I going to leave you anything? I don't think so. But I am going to leave you something that's out of existence, and I'm going to show it to you. I always demonstrate what I say to my beloved man and woman. So that's selfish, right? All those things, all that negativity, all that great self-attachment of guilt, blaming, complaining, expectation, that's all being selfish. Now let's have a look at what's self-centered. There's nothing wrong with being self-centered. As this is a world of self, there has to be some virtue in it, doesn't there? You are self-centered when your survival is threatened and you take action in that moment to survive. I don't think today your survival was very much in question, do you? No. Because self has built a wall around your life and called it civilization. And civilization is selfish. It is not self-centered. Civilization is to protect you from having to protect your own survival. You know, we don't have to go out and kill things and hunt. We've cut all that off, haven't we? So what we've done by making selfish civilization is we've cut ourselves off to the life that we all somehow yearn to get back to, but of course you can't go back. That's not the reality. But by doing that, we've said to ourselves, well, we don't have to fight for survival anymore. So what will we fight for? You know, there's 24 hours in a day. We all like to be busy. So what are we going to do for 24 hours of the day? What do we fight for? So what we came up with is, well, we'll fight to defend our emotions. We won't fight to defend our bodies, because that's not really necessary. We'll fight to defend our emotional self. We will live for our emotional self. We will no longer live for our beautiful body, which is the center of right self-centeredness, isn't it? Because it's the body that gets threatened with being killed, isn't it? By a lion or a tiger or by a drought. And it's right to endeavor to survive as your body. My acceptable self is my body. Well, it's a world of self, and this is what I call myself, and this is the only acceptable self is my body. Now, let's have a look at this selfish self that forgets about my body and then fights for its survival, this selfish self. Fights for the right to be unhappy. Did you ever hear of anything more ridiculous in your life? You wouldn't believe it if someone came from another planet and said what I just said then, that this is how things are on our planet. Everybody's unhappy. Not all the time, because that'd be all right, wouldn't it? If you were unhappy every moment, you wouldn't know you were unhappy. It's when you're unhappy today and happy tomorrow, isn't it? That's the agony. So, it is selfish to be attached to things outside of you. I'm not saying it's selfish to love the things outside of you, but it's selfish to be attached to them. Why? Because if they die, you're going to be unhappy if you're attached to them. And you'll feel an awful wrench and vacuum. And although your body will be performing beautifully, as it always does, heart beating, breath in and out, right? Kidneys working, everything going well, blood circulating, despite your body working beautifully still, you will be on the floor or on the bed weeping, as it is said, your heart out. Well, you never weep your heart out really, do you? All you weep out is an emotional heart that's not this heart at all. Something that you've invented so that you can be unhappy when you like to be, when it suits you. So it is selfish to attach yourself to anything. The body doesn't need anybody, does it? Oh, there's plenty of bodies to come and talk to. You won't run out of bodies. Plenty of companions around if you are open to life. The body doesn't need anybody in particular. Don't worry, somebody will come along to love. And the body will embrace it and love it if it is the opposite sex, and enjoy it and be fulfilled by it and more healthy because of it. For every body, yes, your body on that chair needs love. And that's natural. That's self-centered, just like the animals, in their right self-centeredness, fight for a mate. Fight to the death sometimes. Well, that's for the survival of the species. But they don't fight for the things we fight for, do they? For money and oil, power, prestige, position. All that's the fight for self. The thing is to relate this to your own life. How can you give up the attachment to self, which makes you always suffer? If you have any unhappiness in you now, it's because you're attached to something. What is it? What's not going the way you'd like it to? If something's not going the way you'd like it to, and you haven't done anything about correcting it, then you are selfish. If you've done something to correct it as best you can, and you can do no more than what you've done, then it is selfish to think about it, to spend your time, as it is called, worrying about it, going over and over, trying to speculate about a solution instead of acting to take action. You are being selfish, so you must suffer. Then you say, I wish I could stop this worry. I don't want to worry. Well, I'm sorry. If you start thinking about things in the good times, when the bad times come and things don't go as you want to, then your selfishness will agonize you with worry. I trust you're looking at your life. Say you get up with a mood. Say you have a mood any time. And you don't know why you're moody. Because many people can't say why they're moody. They just say, well, I've got the pip, I'm a bit down today. And that's quite acceptable, apparently, to everyone. But where I come from, that's certainly not acceptable. And if you come in front of me with a mood, and you want my help, and ask me about it, I'll get rid of it in about 2 minutes. Because I will not have selfishness in front of me if you ask for help. Otherwise, if you don't ask for help, you're entitled to be unhappy. Everybody loves unhappiness. Do you not support that? You've got to have a look at your life, your mother and father's life, and all the people around you. But especially your life. If you are unhappy, you love being unhappy. It's no good telling me that you don't love it, because the only thing you hold on to is what you love. If it was a hand grenade with a pin out, you'd soon throw it away, wouldn't you? Why is this? What is this perversity that we all overlook as though it didn't exist? It's because it is the selfishness runs this world and this civilization. It is an alien possession of the human race. It has possessed us. These beautiful bodies, made by God or life, delivered fresh and new in a beautiful package, right? As possessed as fast as we can possess them with unhappiness, as fast as we can feed unhappiness into every little child who's born, we do so and call it love. What sort of a love is that? To feed the child is to look after its survival. We do that, and that is love. It is love to care for anything's survival, including the plants on the table beside me. That is love. Not to be attached to the plant, though. Not to be attached to the child, but to love the child. Love is to care enough to go against the stream. It's hard, extremely difficult, but it's all right. It's the only way out. You've got to be able to stand against yourself. For yourself is afraid of being honest. And when I say about standing against the self, it's not other selves that you have to stand against. It's your own self. This self in me is afraid to be honest. It's afraid to tell people, I don't talk about the past unless it is necessary. This self says, if I say that, I won't have any friends. So this self is attached to friendship. Because everybody talks about the past, no one will talk to me. Well, that's a silly thing to say, isn't it? Because who wants to talk to anyone who talks about the past? But that's the sort of thing you've got to do about going against the stream. If someone tries to put their emotion on you, you all know what that means, don't you? Mum and Dad try to live their life through you. Mum and Dad being so unhappy and having made such a mess of their own life, then try to live their life through you, even when you're an adult. Disgraceful. And you allow it, do you? That makes you unhappy, doesn't it? It feeds Mum and Dad's unhappiness and allows them to continue to be immature, even in their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Immaturity at that age is disgraceful. Is it not? Maturity is to be free of unhappiness, surely, having lived a good old life. Surely. It is immature to pander to unhappiness by accepting the emotions of other people. Am I making sense? Or is it too hard? Well, all that I'm saying is energetic. It just sounds like words. But the words that I speak have great energy in them. And that's going into the place which is out of existence in you, deep down into this body, which is your psyche, inside this body. And there, my words, my energy is going to do the work. It's going to go into what's called your subconscious, turn it over when you're asleep, and the conscious mind, which is about 0.00001% of consciousness, and then it's mostly wrong. While it thinks it's busy and doing everything that it's doing so busily, this energy is going to be working in you tomorrow, next week, next month, next year. For what I speak about is real. It is self-knowledge, isn't it? For if you hear any truth in what I am saying, it is not my truth that I am speaking. It is then your truth. And when you see the truth in your own experience, the truth starts to set you free. And the self starts to die. And that's pretty painful, because the only thing that ever suffers is self. And that's the value of me, if I have any. I start the death of self in you. Only by showing you the truth, if it is the truth for you, of living in this world. Now, an example of not living in this world is to speak of a higher self. It's a great let-out, isn't it? Such as your higher self tells you something. Right. May I ask one question? Yeah. Why Oh, that's all right. Of course, I was going to find out if self was involved here, but if the beautiful body has to do its works, what's wrong with that? You see, the body is beautiful. When you're in your body, right, you smile. All is well when I am in my body, when I am here in my body now. If I creep up into my head and start to live up here, it won't be long before I won't have a body. And I mean that, because the head, when you live in your head, you have no body. And when you live in your head, you start to worry, be very, very concerned and anxious. Who wouldn't be? You haven't got a body. But when you get down and you get down into your beautiful body, your own reality, it's good. You take your chances, but it's all right. I'd like us to go in and see what's inside this body, if we may. so that we can find what I mentioned about being out of existence. Please come in. So we're going to go into this body and find what it's like to be out of existence. We're not going to find any higher self. We'll leave that to the Theosophists and the Indian masters and all those things that talk of such things. Because the higher self is only misleads us. It's this ignorance that speaks to us and claims to be the higher self. Let us go in where the reality is. So I ask you, please, first of all, to breathe out this moment. Breathe out. Straight out. Don't wait and think about it. And then you've got to breathe in. So breathe in. Take 2 or 3 nice deep breaths into the diaphragm or the belly, which is an indication that the diaphragm is being used. Ah, lovely, right? That gets the body, fills the body with what it's supposed to be filled with. Good air, right? Settles the emotional body, which is inside this body, down. So let's go in and close the eyes, go inside into my beautiful body and perceive if there is any good in my body. Now, of course, you wouldn't know you had a body unless you'd use your imagination, but you put your attention down inside the blackness there, and you just feel or see if it's good in here. Is there anything good inside the darkness here, inside my body? To help you, I will say that inside every body, including yours, is the feeling of well-being. It is a very subtle feeling. It's there all the time, and it only disappears because instead of looking for nothing in there, if ever we go in there, we start looking for something. And the feeling of well-being is pretty close to nothing. But it's there, isn't it? That's how the animals are so contented. That's how the baby lies in its pram looking at the ceiling, gurgling away there because it is in touch with its well-being. That's how you're reborn, born again. Not like the Christians, but here this moment. Be in touch with your well-being as the baby is when it lies in its cot. Can you do it? For when you do that, that is out of existence. Well, there's nothing in there, is there? See, nothing. There's no nothing in existence. And my well-being is out of existence. It's sweet in there. That's another word for what is good or well-being. It's peaceful in there. It's silent in there. It's easy in there. And is that not what you call me? Let me introduce you, man and woman of the earth, to me. Not me up here on the stage. That's not me. That's you. Me is in there that you're looking at. Me is the sweetness of life perceived inside my body. That is not self. That is being. Now, if I leave you too long, what will come between you, your attention, and your well-being? Self. I want you to see for yourself what self is. Be easy, be peaceful. In most cases, you will have started to think. A thought will have passed across and interrupted your perception of your well-being. Thought is self. The spoiler. Self or thought is the spoiler. There you are, like now, in touch with your well-being, in touch with the beauty of yourself, for it is very lovely in there. And as soon as I am not reminding you, very shortly after, you think about something. Why? There's nothing to think about, is there? No. Just hold on to your well-being. There is nothing to think about here. You came to just listen and to be. But that's how self works. It spoils everything. And if I were to leave you there any length of time, your thinking would eventually go on to a problem that you have in your life. And then it would start to look at that problem. Soon you would start to be a little bit emotional and restless because that thought would stir your emotional attachment to something. So let's stay with the well-being while you are with me. For when you do it while you are with me, you will find it much easier when you go outside to do it then. In other words, to be true to your non-existence, for every thought comes out of your existence. You can only think about the past. You cannot think about the present. The present is the direct being of that sweetness, that well-being inside your body. That is not an experience. An experience takes time. This does not take time. You can't name it. It is just in the blackness, the darkness inside your psyche, which is inside your body. It is good, it is well-being, but it's very subtle. Now I ask you, while you are still holding on to that or perceiving that state inside your body, I ask you, when you are ready, to open your eyes and then enter the visible world of objects, but still hold on to your reality, the well-being, the peace or the good inside, which you call or is called me in that body. That's the reality of your body, your beautiful living body. When the baby is kicking in the pram, it is immediately perceiving, just like you did then, its well-being. But it has not yet acquired the right to be unhappy. That's why it can connect with its own reality and gurgle as it looks sightlessly when it is very young. Like we close our eyes to help us look sightlessly inside at that part of our being which never was born, never dies, is always there. So the child is eventually taught to be unhappy. It's taught then to have a right to be unhappy. It won't be long, will it, before the face is going red with its own willful demand for something. And you will see self coming into that child. And you will be, if you have this child, you will be desperate sometimes when you see this ugliness that comes into this small boy or girl's face, when the willful one, the unhappy one, starts to express itself through it. The beautiful cherubic face, the face you love, the body that you love, goes like something from another place. That's because this world tolerates unhappiness in myself, and so therefore I unleash it like Pandora's box upon the whole earth. And the children cannot be saved from it, because I will not make the stand and say, I, for one, will not have unhappiness in this beautiful body. How about it? Yes, the man there? Yes, please.
May I ask, do you speak from the vantage point of no longer having any part of self attached to self?
No, it is myself in the first instance that's speaking here, right? My self-centered self, which is my body, right? This is myself. This is a bit of pure self, though, isn't it? The kneecap, right? The hands, that's pure self. Lovely stuff. From the moment it's born until it dies, it's beautiful, it gets aged, but it's beautiful. That is self. So I certainly speak from the vantage point of self just as you do. Then you've got to go into me, haven't you, towards me, that where the words or the impulse to speak or project comes from. I trust you're all following, because this is self-knowledge, isn't it? It's you I'm talking about, in other words. Where do you come from when you speak? Do you come from the well-being of me, the sweetness, the emptiedness, the delight of life, the recognition of love, which is all in me? Or do you come from some of the clouds that is between the external world and what I just described, me, which consists of doubts, fears, emotions, resentments, likes and dislikes? Depends where you come from, for that is self. Now, everybody, of course, comes from time to time and quite often from the beauty of me. But much of the time, especially when we talk about the past and give our opinions instead of the truth of our experience, come from this self. I come from a place of honesty. That's how I keep self to a minimum in this body. All of us have self in the body. All of us, because of our times. These bodies are 2,000 million years old in principle, or in energy. Everything from the first life on earth is embodied in the product of this body. That's a long time, a lot of past. So therefore, past is self, so there's a great deal of past or self or time in everybody. The thing is, though, not to be attached to the time since you were born. The other time, which is passed inside the body, is all right. The only time or past that you are responsible for is that which you have accumulated in your psyche since you were born. And that is measured by unhappiness, mood, opinions instead of facts, truth instead of notions. So I come from a place to protect myself from self, right? From any attachment to self. I endeavor every moment to be true to the situation and honest. I sort of preen myself with honesty and straightforwardness and practicality. You know how the bird has to preen itself, right? To keep its feathers lustrous. So we have to preen ourselves, because self gathers in us every second, hangs on to us because every second becomes past, doesn't it? So we develop a structure around us. And then, unless we break that structure, we'll eventually say, I'm so tired and wearied. I don't know what's wrong with me. Life's lost its zest. Because we don't realize that we have actually got a psychic structure, an egg is formed around us. We haven't shattered it. Every day, every moment. We haven't preened ourselves. Every moment. We haven't been like the phoenix. You've got to be like the phoenix. You've got to die every moment and be reborn again. You've got to destroy this egg that forms around you every second, and then be fresh and new, and then destroy it and be fresh and new. In other words, you've got to be present, like now. Then you are living and dying every second. Are you looking in me now? Do it, please. That's what we're here for. It is black or dark in there. It is fathomless. There's no end to the depth of me. And when you still have emotion in you, it's afraid of the dark. It's afraid of looking into me. It starts to shake a bit, because that darkness in there, that blackness, is death. And emotion is afraid of death. But death, you see, the death in me is the life in me. Yeah. So what's the truth of what I've just said? What's the truth? Well, we're facing the truth of self, aren't we? And I've said that the truth of self is there is no truth in self. So what's the truth behind self? The truth is that there is no death, and nobody's ever been able to show that there is death. And this is why. Because just as tonight you go to sleep and your body disappears, so when you die, you will just withdraw a little bit further into me and your body will disappear. It will disappear from you because you are in reality when you are in me. And all you've done is leave behind a pair of spectacles. You know you've got a pair of spectacles on that makes this whole universe. When you die, you just withdraw from the spectacles, and everybody who's looking through their spectacles says, he's dead. No, his body's dead, and it's going to decay because it's only a dream anyway, and all dreams decay, you know, and disappear. This dream only lasts 70 or 80 years, right? You can see this dream of this body getting a bit old. See it again next year, you'll notice it. So it's already starting to decay, the dream of it. But I that am me, not old at all. Have a look, feel it? You're about as old as you were when you were about 5 years old, 3 years old, 20, how old do you want to be? Have a look in me. The only reason me ever feels old is because of the burden of emotion that's got into me, right? The unhappiness. You chuck that lot out and you're reborn. We'll leave it there for tonight. You must be practical, you must be honest, and you must address and be prepared to face the self that makes all the problems, because the self is not honest. It is very painful as you get rid of the world that the self has built around you, the prison that it's built around you, that is compromising with parents and job and partners, because self lives off compromise. And while you compromise, you'll never find the truth and you'll never be free. My next talk, I'm going to talk about self-realization, which is the next stage after discovering that everything is self. Thank you. What is self-realization? What comes before, during, and after self-realization? Self-realization is a term bandied around in spiritual circles. It's often implied to mean, or is confused with, liberation, enlightenment. But as far as I have ever seen, in everything I have read or heard, no one has ever yet described what it is. I'm going to describe to you tonight what it is. I want you to see it in the context of your entire life. I want you to listen with your life, which of course is your body. Your body is your life. You have no other life outside your body. You only think you have. It is because you think you have a life outside your body that you can't hear the truth. So please, listen with your life being totally in your body. Receive what I'm saying and apply it to your life, what you are. And from this you will be able to see or get an idea of where you are in the great process that leads to self-realization, which is not an end in itself. What is self? we must begin with self, because self is the first word in the term. First thing first, what is self? Self is attachment to existence. We begin by developing a personality. That is the beginning of self, our personality from when we are a child. Personality is this. Please listen to it in your own experience, what I'm saying. Test if it is the truth in your own experience. For the truth is only the truth when it is the truth in your experience. Personality begins with fragmentation. That is, I love or have an interest in golf. Or if I've arranged to play golf and I love golf and I'm interested in it, and something comes along to have to make me cancel an appointment to play the game, I will feel disturbance inside of me. The person will feel disturbance. Because I have an emotional attachment to the game. Golf is separate from me, my center. I love my children. That's another fragment out there, away from my center. I love my mother, and she's another fragment out there. My father, my home. I like or dislike my job, another fragment. Already we've got 6 or 7 fragments, and I don't have to fill in the rest for you, do I? They become emotions within me. So emotion, or this is self, these are fragments of self, create disturbance in me. By the time I've got 50 or 60 or 70 or 100 fragments of attachment to so many things, the person then, whenever it is asked a question about any of these matters it is interested in, reacts from that fragment. So they get mixed up. I often might mix up my attachment to politics. When I'm asked a question about something else, the emotion that I feel about politics I'm likely to put on my children. And we could have an argument, and even although we agree to disagree, there could be emotion inside me against my child or the person opposing me, whom I love, in another fragment of myself. So if you look at the person, and everybody begins with a person, it's a pretty fragmented and a partial type of being. Interested in this for a while, and because it's a fragment, I can't hold my interest too long because I've got another interest over here. So I flit from thing to thing, and my psyche is disturbed because I don't seem to be able to hold my attention for long because I've got so many emotional points in me, and they're all outside my center. That's the person, and that's the personality. And because the personality or the person is so insecure, having no center, the person becomes an unreliable guide to what I am feeling or what I am. the person then becomes a cover-up. Because I can't find really anything in myself that's substantial, I have to cover up my insecurity. So, you will always find a good personality presenting a smile when crying inside, or you've got to present a good face because I'm so insecure inside because I've got no centre. If you happen to recognize yourself, please be honest and say to yourself, well, I see a bit of me in that. That's the immature stage of life as this body, the person and the personality. Self-consciousness, of course, arises out of the personality. Having no centre, I am conscious of myself. Now, I have said that self is ignorance. So when I'm self-conscious, I am conscious of my ignorance. Right. After you've lived a few years, got through the youth into adulthood, say 28 on, I can only speak generally, but you get the idea, might be 25, 28, 30, 35. You enter a new stage, if you're lucky. This is the stage of individuation. Individuation of self. Individuation of self means what we call the individual, right? Individuation of self is when through experience and through joy and pain, we start to have a profounder perception of life. We know a thing or two. What happens then is that these various fragments of emotional self are pulled down, this is over the years, and they start to coalesce into a centre. Not all of them, of course, come down, but sufficient of them come down into the centre for the person who is now, we could say, an individual, but the person still remains, there's still fragmentation there, to have a centre, more authority. It's a centre of ignorance, for all self is ignorance, but it is a centre. And so the person will seem to be able to deliver more authoritatively of their opinions, because they have the support of the rest of the emotions that have gathered together at the centre. So there's a centre of ignorance, a centre of self. Then you start to express yourself from that centre of ignorance. You or we then go into the world to try to make our mark. Before individuation occurs, the person is pretty insecure and not very good at taking charge of people or things. But individuation usually marks that time when we start to take on the world and get really ambitious and effectively ambitious, because we're working from a good mass. The difficulty is that that mass of authority, being ignorance, is emotional, and it's based mostly on likes and dislikes. For if I like golf, I will be attached to golf. As I say, if someone cancels the appointment, I'm going to feel I want to play. I want to, I like it, I want to. So there's an emotion and attachment to the golf there. And if I love my children, but every person who loves their children also becomes attached to their children. It's not the love that hurts when the child dies, it's the attachment that tears. So these emotions that come together in individuation are still attachments. And an attachment is also what I don't like. Oh, I don't like him or her. That's an attachment. That's an emotion. So in individuation, all the likes and dislikes come together and form a basis or a coalition of self. My life in the West is about self. Yours is too. And of course, underneath this self is life, this body. And this body is beautiful. I'm talking about your body. This body is beautiful. The flesh gets a little older, but that's okay. No, there's some beauty in this body. It's called life. It's not self at all. As a matter of fact, the more greedy my person or individual is, the more it destroys this little body. With emotion and tightness. Where does this come from, I tell you I'm going to do so-and-so, so-and-so. Do you think that's the body talking? Oh, come on. The body doesn't want to do anything like that. It's the self in the dark inside, isn't it? Yes. So when it does that, it corrodes this body inside, gives it its emotions turn to corrosive fluids, tension, worry. And so my little body gets tense. My organs can't operate in harmony because the strain is put on it. So I feel my life is lived in this body as a tension. And then because I am filled with self, which is emotion, because that determines the life of my beautiful little body from within, I start to make my body, listen to this, I start to make my little body, my beautiful brain, worry. Do you think your body's worried? Oh, please. My body sees the beauty of the flowers, like yours. But if I'm tight inside with self, even though it be individuated and not just personal self, it's individuated self, how can I see the flowers if I'm thriving and striving inside to compete and win? I can't see the flowers, there's no profit in it. And say, yeah, sure, they're flowers. Now let's get on with the important business. This is a selfish, violent, greedy civilization or world. Okay, but we've got to be practical. And we've got to be what we are, for this world is what I am. I made this world, I am man, as you are man and woman. I made this world, this society. So what I made, it's my bed, I have to sleep in it. We mustn't have any self-judgment in this. The idea is not to judge it all. The idea is to see it all, just as it is. To know myself. How do I know myself? Well, you know yourself by listening to what I'm saying now. You start to get the broader vision of what life is. There is life and there is living. Self is living. Self is the powerhouse of living. Love is the powerhouse of life. Love, but don't be attached to what you love. do your work in this society, this world that you've made, but don't be attached to it. Love your children, but don't be attached to them. Why? Because they're going to die. The saving grace of this civilization, this world that we have made, the trick up God's sleeve when he handed us the right to make a world was, I forgot to tell you, man and woman, and you'll forget this anyway, everybody dies. Every self dies. It's just this, that there is death. Self always forgets. It forgets what life's about. It's about you and me being killed sooner or later. Is that news to you? Right. So at this stage we're expressing self and we drive into the world. Now there's another process going on. There's a profound process going on after individuation. A process of knowing yourself. You know yourself to be a liar. I trust this is so. You know yourself to be a phony. I trust this is not news to you. You know yourself to be a whiner and a whinger, as they say in Australia. A complainer and a blamer. Well, I don't have to say any more. We all know ourselves, don't we? Well done. I know myself. But we don't like that, do we? We really think we're beautiful. Only because someone else calls us a liar, we hit one of those emotions and we go like this and say, I'm not a liar. And he says, well, I wasn't talking about now, I was talking about yesterday. You know? We're going to lie tomorrow or today or something. We're going to blame something and complain about something. We're going to chop something down which doesn't need to be chopped down. We're going to tread on something that doesn't need to be hurt. Oh, what we are. That's all right. Don't be attached to what I'm saying, will you? Or you'll suffer. Right. Just know yourself. So while we're driving into this world and making a name for ourselves, we get to know ourselves, don't we? Even though we do it and we cover it up with a bit of personality and, you know, today always goes into yesterday, so it'll be all right. And everybody's doing the same thing, so we all forgive each other. Well, sort of. And it works okay. But then something happens through the joy and the pain, the maturity of living. Something as profound is happening down inside of me. Now, me is pretty deep. All self is in me, but me is not all self. For me is the essence or the inner state of my beautiful externalized body. Feel me? What's it like in there? Well, I'll speak from here. I'll tell you what me is like. I feel sweet in me. I am free in me. It is rather beautiful in me. I have love in me. I have clarity in me. I am at peace in me. How's it in me out there or in there? If you are in me, where I am in me now, and why shouldn't you be? You are then in the profundity of my body, that body there. And it is sweet, and there is no age, and you are the girl or boy of 16, even if you're 50 or 60. But if you are relating at any time in your life to the self in me, instead of relating to the beauty in me, the girl or boy in me, the sweetness in me, if you relate to that stinking self in me, you will worry, you will feel guilty, insecure, worried and unhappy. There comes a time when the burden of the self in me is so great on the beauty of me that something happens. I say, I cannot stand this self, this thing that I seem to be. I can't stand it anymore. This profound change happens in some people when they've had enough of this awful self. That's because God made these bodies, God made life on earth, and God begins in me, deep down in the psyche. There is a life rising forever. Every moment, life is rising out of the depths of me, and it is renewing everything that has life. Every animal, every plant is being renewed by this rising of this extraordinary thing called life. That is intelligent. That life keeps the heart beating, the blood circulating, repairs everything with a miracle every day in this beautiful body, as it repairs this blessed earth every day despite the self's greed and corruption and pollution of it. This beautiful, glorious life that arises out of me and which I can feel this very moment as the sweetness and beauty in me, my body, but not in myself. So this life rising is saying to everybody, have you had enough? Have you suffered enough yet? And then when he loses his 40 companies, or even his little child, he or she says, my God, I'm finished. I've had it. I'm finished. And life is there. For as soon as self is given up, life is there. See? All you got to do is get rid of the rubbish and you find the room is fine. So the man or woman says, God, there is something worthwhile. Instead of driving out, there becomes a little turn or a large turn within. And instead of looking only without, doing it my way, this is what I want, instead of that, there's a little bit of the perception goes inward, down towards me, towards the sweetness, where the life is rising, the stream of life is coming up, and I cannot help but turn towards the source of life. And between that turning and me, the source of life, is this self. This is the beginning of self-realization, and every one of you is in it, more or less. Self-realization takes 20, 30, 40 years or is never completed. Remember I said that we know ourselves to be liars and we know ourselves to be phonies and all the rest. We know, but to know something is not to realize it. For instance, all that I have said tonight, you knew. I cannot tell you anything that you do not already know. But when I, the Master, say it, you can realize what you know, if you are ready. But it is fragmented. And it goes on for 20 or 30 years as you start to realize that you are a liar. You then start to live, I will not lie. I will not be attached to this self that lies anymore. Well, that's only an example I'm giving about lying. There are so many other things that you turn your back on as you see yourself and realize yourself within. And as I say, it takes 10, 20, 30, 40 years. As you do this, you discover an authority, an authenticity. You start to get not a mass of self, a substantial mass. You start to get, by getting rid of self, you start to become as nothing. The more you face the liar, the guilty one, and all the rest, they disappear. Each one disappears after a time when you've faced it long enough. And the facing is very, very painful and scary. But as you face it, it starts to dissolve like all fear or ignorance dissolves. And you start to grow in an emptiness. Not an emptiness, man and woman. Emptiness is of the mind that says, I'm bored, I'm empty, empty of experience. But an emptiedness, you start to ladle yourself out. And you start to grow in nothing. And when you look inside yourself, inside me, you start to see nothing. And you say, that's better. And when you go far enough and emptied enough of yourself out, you will say, with a realization that is absolutely true, that you will know it is absolutely true, whatever anyone says, you will say, I'm free. I'm free. But you're not free yet, but you've got a smell of freedom because you can see there's nothing in me. I'm nothing. You'll realize I am nothing. Now I want you just please to have a look inside of me now. There's nothing in there, is there? Nothing. So you get more and more this realization of nothing as the old fragments of the person are confronted and got rid of. You then say, I'm not attached to golf. I like to play golf. My body likes exercise, right? And I like to play golf. But I'm not attached to it. If, and this is tragic, if my child dies tonight, and I love my child, and am not attached to my child, my body may sob. But I won't attach myself to my sobbing just because everybody says how sad it is and how tragic it is to have lost your child. For I would have to say, look, there's a little child dying somewhere else in the world tonight. I'm not special. The form of my child is dead, will be buried and decomposed in a few days. But while I have love of my child is not dead. For I did not love my child's body. I love the essence of my child. And that is my love within me. And my child is not dead. That's if I knew the truth of life. If I discovered nothing in me, that would be revealed to me. If I am honest to life like that, then life will be honest to me and reveal to me, there is no death, my son, my daughter. There is love, and love is not dead. Love is now. So these sort of insights will come into the man or woman who is realizing the self. This goes on and I become more and more authentic. I then start to speak to people with more authority, not of my worldly knowledge, because I see that's all self. I'll even say, everything that I say is crap, because it is self-speaking, and so don't believe a word I'm saying, but I'll endeavour to get it out as straight as I can, but don't believe anything I say about the world. It'll just be an opinion. After I've got pretty well into self-realization, I'll get a touch of guru-itis. Of course, to be free of self is to be guru. I didn't make the rules, you know. That's how it is. When you are free of self, when you have realized self, and when you've done a few things after that, you are guru. Or a few things have been done for you. So by this time you've got a touch of guru-itis, and everyone's a bit afraid to come near you. Because as soon as they come near you, any self, it won't be long before you'll be pointing out to them what the self is in them. And they say, not him again. I'll become quite intolerant, as a matter of fact, at this stage. I'll become even forceful with the self that remains of me that I haven't seen. When I sit in a room, there'll be a sort of bristling coming out of me. Nobody's really comfortable because, you see, all this is done psychically. There's no communication out here. It's all done by psychic emanations. And this sort of intolerance with self is very uncomfortable to our psychic self, as it is uncomfortable to the one who's realizing his self. Now, we could be 10, 15, 20 years in by now. He starts to become intolerant with the world. He's not only intolerant with himself and the people. He sees that people are stupid and because they won't get rid of their self. He then starts to see the whole of existence, the whole world as self, as ignorance. He sees business, everything as ignorance, because really, you see, the whole world is himself, isn't it? I made this world. It's myself. I suddenly lift my face up and I see the whole world out here and I say, my God, this is myself too. And this goes on for, as I say, 20 or 40 years. However, there is a process in the latter years where I start to become a bit more mellow as I throw all this out of what I'm doing is detaching myself from it. But I get attached to my detachment from it. See? And then I start to recede quite nicely down into me, to the bottom of me, and I become easy and mellow at perhaps round about the age of 60 or 65 with a bit of luck. And then I am detached from the whole thing, and it's all self, I know that, but it is not me. I made this self, I am responsible for the whole thing, but it is not me. Then I am free. I then start to be. Self-realization is to live detachment from all concern about the world or what is happening in it. It is to detach from all guilt, all resentment, likes, dislikes, to detach from everything that is the world. Now, I only said to detach from it. I didn't say that anything disappeared. The world remains precisely as it is, except it is seen to be a disharmonious harmony. It is seen in its whole that everything is right. It is not seen that everything is good. It is seen that everything is right. And you know that life or God is still, believe it or not, in charge. You then begin the process of detachment from detachment. This is not realized and has never been explained on this earth. For you are hearing tonight the most complete description of self-realization and being that has yet been recorded. For I am being. Being is a very long process of detachment from detachment. It cannot be described. I cannot go any further in words to describe this state to you, except that all my knowledge, my infinite knowledge of life and love and truth and God and death, comes out of me or comes from my being. For even me disappears, because me is being. Right. You will share in my being by just staying with me. And when you stay with me in this stillness, this silence inside of me, you are in touch and facing your reality. For it is my power, if you are ready, to put you in touch with me inside of you. The stillness that is your reality. Now I was going to talk about woman, about self. Man is the principle on earth with something to do, according to my definition. Woman has nothing to do but to be loved and to be loved. Once woman is loved, she doesn't want to do anything else, it just follows. She will do what she does. When woman is loved by man and loved enough, she then realizes that she is loved. She's just master, I don't like the word mistress, but master of love. Very still, passive, sweet, beautiful. That's woman. She goes through the same process of self-realization to wake up to herself, to know herself, to realize herself. But she will realize, I am love. And in that, she then emits power. She has the power to change man. So he who is the master of the world can only be mastered by woman of love. She tries to master him with herself, her emotions. She has no chance. He gave her those emotions. Every woman's emotion was put into her by man and his lack of love for her. So woman, when she starts to self-realize, she's going to have to get rid of her emotions. And she has to stop new emotions being put into her by man. Her job is to just be love. Man, as I say, his realization is more intellectual than woman. Man realizes the truth that I've described to you tonight, and then invariably has to give it to the people. For where I am, for instance, I am serving myself. Only myself has now been manifested outside of me as the people. The people are myself. I serve the emotions and the ignorance in the people. I endeavor to face that and take that out of their bodies, just as I took it out of my own here, my own psyche. So I serve myself in my being. Okay. Yes, a man at the back.
As an ordinary man, are you enlightened in the same way that the Buddha meant the word?
As an ordinary man, are you enlightened as the Buddha meant? I don't know that the Buddha was enlightened. I am Buddhi, if that's any answer to you.
What does that word mean?
Well, there's no Buddha. Buddha has no meaning whatever, because Buddha is historical, and there is no truth in history or in the past. I am Buddhi. I am intelligence. I am pure intelligence. I am consciousness. I am now. I am this moment, this instant. That is Buddhi. Moving so fast that I do not hold any moment inside of me.
Is there any further stage of maturity that you could go?
There are masters, as you all know, who keep changing their names regularly. I won't say every 5 minutes, but every few years. And the reason that they do this is because the consciousness moves so fast and there is no end to the consciousness that they reach a certain stage and they say, well, this is it, and my name is Bhagwan, I am God. But there's no end, and no man is God. He only realizes he is God, but then he can only be an ordinary man after the realization. To be ordinary is to be as nothing. So then a few years later he might call himself Bhagwan something else, you know, because his consciousness has suddenly reached a climacteric, again because there is no end to consciousness and what it reveals, in which he says, no, that's not the end of it, I'm this. This is it. I am it. And then, darn it, if he doesn't realize something else. You've got to have a new name. The truth is, there is no end to my consciousness, and it is the divine consciousness which is in everyone and everything. It is it. That's all. And no one can claim it. No one can comment on it really. It is just being, and even that's a limitation of it. So we've reached the end of the evening. I trust that I have opened up the vision of life a little wider for you. So in dealing with self and in getting your life right, it does take time in the external circumstances. But in the inner state, it doesn't take time, does it? You can go into me, be out of existence within, while externally you are in existence. And that's why the man said, I am in the world, but I am not of it. In that place inside of me, all is one. And that will be revealed to you the more you go into me, that there is only one, and it is me, and in me is everything. So thank you for being with me, for you see, eventually you have to serve yourself. I am serving myself. You are myself. So I serve you. In that way, I free myself of self every moment. Thank you. Good night.